In the realm of eternal shadows, two truths were absolute. Vampires reigned supreme over the night, and humans born without the sacred blood mark were deemed unworthy of existence. Elena Ashford, a young woman of 22, bore no such mark. Though she was born into the most powerful noble family in the kingdom, her lack of the vampiric seal had condemned her to a life of servitude. From the tender age of 5, when it became undeniably clear that her body rejected the transformation, she had been banished to the cold, damp confines of the palace basement. While her siblings honed their supernatural combat skills in the grand training halls, Elena spent her days scrubbing the palace floors, her hands raw and chapped, while her sister, Isolde, draped herself in gowns of the finest black silk. Elena meticulously mended the tears in those very garments, her nimble fingers a stark contrast to the rough fabric. And while her father, Lord Victor Ashford, presided over solemn gatherings of the Council of 5 lineages, Elena moved through the opulent halls like a phantom, serving wine in silent, unnoticed deference. She was, to all intents and purposes, invisible. The night of the Eternal Union ceremony was meant to be a celebration of unparalleled grandeur, the most significant event the kingdom had witnessed in a decade. Isolde, the epitome of a perfect vampire daughter, was to be wed to Lord Cassian, a high-ranking vampire from the formidable Sanguinary clan. This union promised to solidify the power of two of the most influential families in the realm. Elena, as always, was relegated to the role of a servant, tasked with attending to the 200 esteemed guests. Her dress was a threadbare, patched-up affair, her feet bare and calloused, her hair pulled back severely with a scrap of old cloth. She moved through the throng of glittering, aristocratic vampires, a stark, humble figure amidst their dark splendor. She carried a heavy silver tray laden with crystal goblets, each filled with blood aged for 50 years, the most exquisite and expensive vintage in the entire kingdom. The air was thick with the scent of ancient blood, rich perfumes, and the low hum of vampiric conversation. As she approached the main table, where Isolde and Lord Cassian sat enthroned, a sudden, piercing shriek cut through the celebratory din. "Stop the ceremony!" Isolde cried, her voice laced with theatrical horror, her crimson gown shimmering under the candlelight. Every single eye in the vast hall, from the most ancient elder to the youngest fledgling, swiveled to face her. Isolde's perfectly manicured finger, adorned with a ruby the size of a pigeon's egg, pointed directly at Elena. It was her. She poisoned the blood. I saw her. She put verbena powder in the goblets. She wants to destroy my wedding out of pure envy. Elena froze, the heavy tray slipping from her numb fingers. The crystal goblets shattered on the polished marble floor, spilling the precious, dark liquid like a morbid offering. Her mind reeled, unable to comprehend the monstrous lie. I would never, she stammered, her voice barely a whisper, lost amidst the sudden gasp of the crowd. But no one listened. No one questioned. Lord Cassian, his sharp senses already alerted, had leaned down to sniff the spilled blood. His eyes, usually a calm, predatory gold, narrowed to dangerous slits. "Verbena," he hissed, his voice low and venomous. "This would have burned me from the inside." Lord Victor Ashford, Elena's own father, rose from his seat at the head table. His face, usually a mask of aristocratic composure, was now contorted with a terrifying rage. "How dare you bring such dishonor upon this family?" he thundered, his voice echoing through the stunned silence of the hall. Elena fell to her knees amidst the shards of crystal and the spreading pool of blood, her heart pounding against her ribs. "Father, I swear I didn't." He spat, a gesture of utter contempt, the spittle landing mere inches from her face. "You are not my daughter. You are a mistake of nature, a blight upon our lineage." His gaze, colder than the deepest winter, swept over the assembled guards. "Take her, break every bone in her body, and then abandon her in the forgotten forest. Let the beasts finish the work." 3 hulking vampire guards, their faces impassive, seized Elena. They dragged her out of the grand hall, past the horrified, yet silent, faces of the noble guests. She was pulled through the palace gates, into the cold, driving rain, her body scraping against the rough cobblestones. The last thing she heard from inside the palace walls were the faint, chilling sounds of laughter. They took her to the outer courtyard, a desolate space where the rain lashed down mercilessly. There, under the unforgiving sky, they began their brutal work. A fist connected with her ribs, and she heard the sickening crack of bone. Another blow, a vicious kick, and her jaw screamed in protest. A heavy boot stomped on her hand, and she felt the delicate bones of her fingers splinter. Elena screamed, a raw, animal sound torn from her throat, until her voice was nothing but a hoarse rasp. When her body finally ceased to struggle, when she lay limp and broken, barely conscious, they tossed her into a crude wooden cart. The journey was agonizing, every jolt sending fresh waves of pain through her shattered frame. They drove her deep into the forgotten forest, a place so shrouded in perpetual darkness and ancient dread that even the most fearless vampires dared not tread there. One of the guards, his face a grim shadow in the gloom, unceremoniously dumped her broken body onto the muddy ground. "And if the beasts don't kill you," he sneered, "the cold will." And then, with a final, chilling laugh, they vanished into the night, leaving her utterly alone. Elena lay there, bleeding, shivering, her body a mangled ruin. Her vision blurred, the world a swirling vortex of pain and despair. She stared up at the black, starless sky, the rain washing over her, mingling with her tears and blood. A single, desperate whisper escaped her lips, a plea to the indifferent heavens. "Please, just let me die." It was then, amidst the rustling leaves and the mournful sigh of the wind, that she heard it. Footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate. Each step resonated with an ancient power, a presence that seemed to command the very shadows around them. A deep, resonant voice, like the rumble of distant thunder, echoed through the forest. "He who dares bleed here." Elena, her eyelids heavy with pain and exhaustion, struggled to open her eyes. A figure emerged from the impenetrable gloom, a silhouette of impossible height and grace. He had long, dark hair that fell to his shoulders, eyes that glowed with an infernal red, like embers in the deepest night. His skin was as pale and smooth as polished marble, and he was clad in ancient armor, black as obsidian, etched with golden runes that pulsed with a faint, otherworldly light. He moved with an effortless, predatory grace, a being of immense power and timeless antiquity. He stopped beside her, his gaze sweeping over her broken form, and then, his eyes, those burning crimson orbs, widened in a flicker of profound shock. "Impossible," he murmured, his voice a low, guttural whisper. He knelt beside her, his touch surprisingly gentle as he reached out and placed a hand on her chest. At his touch, a blinding golden light erupted from beneath her skin, forming a complex, intricate symbol, a sun intertwined with serpents, pulsing with an ancient energy. The vampire recoiled, a gasp escaping his lips, his composure momentarily shattered. The primordial mark. After 3,000 years, he looked at her face, her eyes fluttering closed, the last vestiges of life slowly ebbing away. A low, fierce growl rumbled in his chest. "No, you will not die." With a swift, decisive movement, he bit deeply into his own wrist, tearing the flesh. Dark, rich blood welled up, thick and potent. He then forced his bleeding wrist to her lips, his voice a command that brooked no argument. "Drink, damn you. Drink." His blood, thick and metallic, burned like liquid fire as it coursed down her throat. Elena felt an impossible sensation. Every shattered bone in her body began to knit itself back together, every gaping wound sealed, every cell regenerating with astonishing speed. A gasp tore from her lips, her eyes snapping open, now faintly glowing with a soft, golden light. The vampire held her by the shoulders, his gaze intense, searching. "Who marked you? Who placed the seal?" Elena stared at him, confused, terrified, her mind struggling to process the impossible events. I don't know what you're talking about." He ran a hand over the symbol on her chest, which now glowed faintly beneath her skin, a subtle pulse of light. "You were sealed at birth. Someone hid what you truly are." He rose, effortlessly lifting her into his arms as if she weighed nothing, and began to move through the dense ancient forest. "My name is Kale. I am the first vampire alive, the only one transformed directly by Lilith, the mother of shadows." He looked down at her as he walked, his crimson eyes holding a strange mix of awe and possessiveness. "And you carry her blood. You are the primordial daughter, the last direct descendant of Lilith." Elena shook her head weakly, her mind reeling. I'm just a human. I don't even have a mark." Kyle smiled, a dangerous, fascinating curve of his lips. "You have a mark. You always have. It was merely hidden." He stopped before a colossal gate of black stone, intricately carved with ancient, pulsating runes. "And now, you are mine." Elena awoke in an immense bed, draped in sheets of the softest black silk. The room was vast, carved from volcanic rock, its walls adorned with flickering, eternal candles. Ancient frescoes covered the surfaces, depicting epic battles between vampires and humans, scenes of power and despair. She sat up, her body feeling strangely light, completely free of pain. She touched her own face, her ribs, her fingers. Every injury, every broken bone, was perfectly healed. Kale sat in a shadowed corner of the room, observing her with an unnerving stillness. "You slept for 3 days." Elena pulled the silk sheets closer, a shiver running through her. "Where am I?" "My refuge," he replied, his voice a low rumble. 800 meters beneath the surface. No one knows it exists." He rose, moving towards her with a silent, predatory grace. "You have questions. I have answers. But first..." He extended a hand, his long, elegant fingers beckoning. "Come with me." Kyle led her through a labyrinth of dark, echoing corridors, their footsteps the only sound. They finally arrived at a colossal chamber, the Library of Eternal Shadows. Thousands upon thousands of ancient tomes lined the towering walls, their spines worn with age. Scrolls lay unfurled on massive reading tables, and priceless relics gleamed in glass display cases. The air was thick with the scent of old parchment and forgotten magic. He moved to a specific section, his fingers tracing the spines of the books until he found one bound in black leather, emblazoned with the same golden symbol that had appeared on Elena's chest. "This is the grimoire of Lilith," he explained, his voice hushed with reverence. "Written by her before she vanished 3,000 years ago." He opened it to a specific page, its ancient script glowing faintly. Elena leaned closer, her eyes scanning the words. "When the last daughter awakens, the primordial heart will respond. He who possesses her shall control the destiny of all immortals. But beware, for she shall be hunted by all clans, and only he marked by her shall be able to protect her." She looked up at Kyle, her face pale with a dawning horror. "Primordial heart. What is that?" Kyle closed the grimoire, the heavy thud echoing in the vast library. "It is the most powerful relic that has ever existed. The physical heart of Lilith herself, torn from her at the moment of her ascension. Whoever possesses it can control all vampires. To create, to destroy, to dominate." His crimson eyes fixed on her with an unnerving intensity. "And you are the key to finding it. Your blood reacts to the heart. It calls to you. And now that your mark has awakened—" He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "Every vampire clan in the world will hunt you." Elena instinctively took a step back, her mind reeling from the weight of his words. "Then let me go. Let me go back to—" "Back to what?" Cale cut her off, his voice cold and sharp. "To the family that beat you and left you for dead. To the father who spat on you." He seized her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze, his grip firm, but not painful. "You have no home anymore. No family. You only have me." Elena angrily pushed his hand away. "I didn't ask for any of this." Kyle's lips curved into a dark, knowing smile. "Neither did I. But here we are." He turned away, his back to her. "You can try to flee, but in 48 hours, the 5 clans will sense your mark, and they will come. And when they do—" He looked back over his shoulder, his eyes gleaming in the dim light. "You will beg me to protect you." Meanwhile, far above in the world of the living, a clandestine meeting was underway in the chilling depths of the Council of Shadows. 5 ancient vampires, each a formidable leader of their respective clans, sat enthroned on seats carved from bone and dark stone. There was Draven, leader of the Sanguinary clan, his eyes black and devoid of mercy, a cruel smile perpetually playing on his lips. Seraphine, of the Lunar clan, possessed a lethal beauty and a voice that could seduce the unwary. Magnus, the formidable leader of the Ironborn clan, was a mountain of muscle, his scarred body a testament to countless battles. Leora, from the Shadows clan, was a silent, deadly assassin, her presence barely a whisper. And finally, Lord Victor Ashford, Elena's father, represented his own powerful clan. Draven slammed a fist onto the table, the sound echoing ominously. "The mark has been felt. After 3,000 years, the primordial daughter has awakened." Seraphine's lips curved into a slow, predatory smile. So the prophecies were true. Victor Ashford's brow furrowed, a flicker of unease crossing his face. Where was she felt? Draven's gaze, cold and piercing, fixed on him. In the forgotten forest, exactly where you ordered your daughter to be abandoned. A heavy silence descended upon the chamber. Victor's face went ashen. "Elena," he whispered, the name a ghost on his lips. Magnus let out a booming, mirthless laugh. "You banished the primordial daughter from your own house. What a delicious irony." Draven rose from his throne, his presence radiating menace. "It matters not. She is with Cale now. And if he has realized what she is—" Seraphine finished his thought, her voice a silken whisper. "He will never surrender her." Leora, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke, her voice as cold and sharp as ice. "Then we kill Kyle, and we take the girl." Back in Kyle's subterranean castle, Elena was engrossed in the ancient texts of the library, trying to decipher the cryptic prophecies, when the very walls of the fortress began to tremble violently. Cale appeared instantly at her side, his movements a blur. "They are here." "Who?" Elena cried, her heart leaping into her throat. "Draven!" With a deafening explosion, the eastern wall of the library shattered inwards, sending shards of rock and dust flying. 3 vampires from the Sanguinary clan stormed in, led by Draven himself. He was a terrifying sight, clad in armor that seemed to be forged from crystallized blood, his eyes black and utterly lifeless. Draven's gaze immediately found Elena, and a cruel, triumphant smile spread across his face. So it is true. The legend in flesh and blood. Cale stepped forward, placing himself protectively between Elena and the invaders. "You will not touch her." Draven let out a mocking laugh. "Cale, you are weak. How long has it been since you fed on human blood? 500 years? 1,000? He advanced, his eyes gleaming with malicious intent. You can no longer even awaken your primal form. But I... His gaze flickered to Elena, filled with a dark hunger. I will drink from her, and I will become stronger than you. Kyle, his ancient fury ignited, attacked first. The ensuing battle was a whirlwind of speed and violence, a clash of ancient powers. But Draven had been right. Kale was indeed weaker. Draven, with a cunning move, slammed Kale against the wall, then plunged a blade of pure silver into Kale's shoulder, the only metal capable of truly harming an ancestral vampire. Kale roared in pain, falling to his knees, the silver burning through his ancient flesh. Draven turned his attention back to Elena, his eyes gleaming with triumph. Now, you. He lunged towards her, his hands outstretched. But as his fingers brushed against her arm, a blinding explosion of golden light erupted from Elena's body, throwing Draven violently backward, slamming him against the opposite wall with enough force to crack the solid stone. Elena stared at her own hands, which were now glowing with an ethereal, golden light. Draven, enraged but undeterred, picked himself up and charged again. But Elena, acting on instinct, raised her hand, and a shimmering barrier of pure light materialized between them. Draven crashed into the barrier, repelled with an astonishing force. Kale, still wounded and struggling, looked at Elena with a mixture of awe and fascination. You are not just the key. You are a primordial power. Kale was faltering, the silver blade poisoning his ancient blood. Elena, her heart pounding, rushed to his side. With a desperate cry, she yanked the blade from his shoulder, and Kale roared in agony. Without a moment's hesitation, she bit deeply into her own wrist, drawing forth her blood, and pressed it against his lips. Drink. Now. Kale hesitated for a fraction of a second, his eyes wide with surprise. But the primal hunger, awakened by the scent of her unique blood, overwhelmed him. He seized her arm, his fangs sinking into her flesh, and drank deeply. And then, something monumental occurred. Kale's eyes exploded into a brilliant, pure crimson. Massive, shadowy wings tore from his back, unfurling to their full, terrifying span. His fangs elongated, his body growing, stretching, until he stood nearly 10 feet tall, a towering figure of primal vampiric power. His form had transformed, awakened by the potent, ancient blood of the primordial daughter. Draven, who had just managed to regain his footing, stared in utter disbelief, his eyes wide with terror. No. Impossible. Kyle, now a terrifying embodiment of ancient power, lunged forward. In a single, impossibly swift movement, he tore Draven's heart from his chest. The other two vampires, witnessing the horrific display, fled in a panicked scramble. Silence descended upon the ruined library, broken only by the sound of Kale's heavy breathing. Slowly, his primal form receded, his body shrinking back to its original size, his wings dissolving into shadow. He looked at Elena, still with traces of her blood on his lips, and approached her, his hand reaching out to touch her face. You gave me more power in one draft than 1,000 humans in a lifetime. He leaned his forehead against hers, his voice a low, wondering whisper. What have you done to me? In the days that followed, an undeniable shift occurred between Kale and Elena. He found himself unable to stay away from her, drawn to her with an intensity he hadn't felt in millennia. He began to teach her, patiently guiding her as she learned to harness the burgeoning primordial light within her. He brought her rare human delicacies, ensuring she was nourished and comfortable. He would often sit by her bedside, watching her sleep, a silent ancient guardian. One night, Elena awoke to find him there, his crimson eyes fixed on her. "Do you always watch me like this?" she asked, a faint smile playing on her lips. Kyle offered a rare, subtle smile in return. "I do not sleep. And you?" You are more interesting than 3,000 years of solitude." He reached out, gently touching a strand of her hair. You frighten me, you know." Elena frowned, a flicker of concern in her eyes. "Me? Why?" He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a low, intimate murmur. "Because for 3,000 years, I felt nothing. No pain. No desire. No... this." He touched her chest, where the mark now glowed faintly, a soft pulse beneath her skin. "But when I am near you, I feel everything." Her heart quickened, a sudden unfamiliar warmth spreading through her. "Kyle." He drew even closer, his lips hovering mere inches from hers, his breath warm against her skin. "You were made for me, and I was awakened for you." He was about to kiss her, to finally bridge the chasm of centuries and species, but he stopped, his eyes filled with a sudden, ancient warning. "But if I mark you, you will never be human again. You will become mine. Forever." Elena, her gaze unwavering, reached up and cupped his face in her hands. "And what if I want that?" His eyes widened, a flicker of surprise and raw emotion crossing his ancient features. But before he could respond, a deafening crash echoed through the castle. The massive doors to the chamber burst open, revealing Seraphine, the alluring vampire of the Lunar clan, followed closely by Magnus and Leora. But it was the fourth figure that truly shocked Elena. Lord Victor Ashford, her own father. Elena's face went ashen. "My father?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Victor looked at her, his face a complex mixture of guilt and desperate greed. "Elena, I didn't know. I swear. I didn't know you were—" "Liar," Cale snarled, already moving into a defensive stance, his eyes blazing. Seraphine smiled, a predatory, seductive curve of her lips. "Kyle, darling, it doesn't have to be this way. We only want the girl. Surrender her, and you live." Cale let out a dark, humorless laugh. "You think you can defeat me, after I drank from her?" Magnus frowned, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. "Drank?" Seraphine's eyes widened as the realization dawned on her. "He fed on the primordial blood. He is at the peak of his power." She glanced at the other clan leaders, her voice sharp. "Change of plans. We kill him first." The battle erupted with a ferocity that shook the very foundations of the ancient castle. 4 ancestral vampires, each a master of their own dark arts, launched themselves against Cale. Elena, caught in the maelstrom, tried desperately to help. But Leora, the silent assassin, seized her, pressing a cold blade against her throat. "Do not move, or I will sever your head." Kyle saw the threat, and a primal roar tore from his throat. His shadowy wings exploded from his back, and he lunged towards Leora, but Magnus intercepted him, his massive form a formidable obstacle. The fight was devastating, a whirlwind of ancient power and raw violence. The very castle began to crumble under the force of their blows. Seraphine unleashed her blood magic, crimson tendrils of energy attempting to ensnare Kyle. Magnus attacked with brutal, unyielding force. Victor, torn between fear and a desperate, misguided sense of duty, hesitated, but then moved to immobilize Elena. "Elena, please, do not resist. It is for your own good," Elena screamed, her voice raw with betrayal. "You left me to die." She raised her hands, and a blinding wave of golden light erupted from her, throwing everyone backward, sending them sprawling across the ruined chamber. Kyle seized the opportunity. He plunged his hand into Magnus's chest, but he did not kill him. "Leave. Now. Or I will not let a single one of you escape alive." Seraphine, assessing the overwhelming power of Kyle, made a swift decision. Retreat. With a collective shimmer, they vanished into the shadows. Victor, however, remained. He stood there, his face etched with a profound sorrow, tears of blood tracing paths down his cheeks. "Elena, I am so sorry. I didn't know. I swear. I didn't know you were—" Elena stared at him, her body trembling, her heart a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. "My mother," she whispered, the name a fragile question. "She was of Lilith's line," Victor confessed, his voice choked with grief. "A direct descendant, and when you were born, the council wanted to kill you. I made a pact with a witch. I sealed your mark. I hid you." He fell to his knees, his head bowed in shame. But when you didn't manifest the transformation, I thought the seal had erased everything, that you were just human." He looked up at her, his eyes pleading for understanding. "Forgive me." Elena stared at him, the pain of his betrayal still fresh, still raw. "You beat me. You called me a mistake." "I know," he whispered, his voice broken. "And I will carry that burden forever." Cale approached, his presence a silent warning. "Leave, Victor, before I change my mind." Victor looked at Elena one last time, a silent plea in his eyes, then turned and vanished into the shadows, his shame a palpable weight. Cale gently took Elena's shoulders, his gaze serious. "They will return. Stronger. With more clans." Elena wiped away her tears, her resolve hardening. "Then what do we do?" Cale took a deep breath. "We find the primordial heart, before they do." Elena's eyes widened. "But if someone uses it—" "I know," Cale interrupted, his voice grim. "That is why you will use it." "Me?" Cale touched her face, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. "You are the only one who can. The heart only responds to the direct blood of Lilith. If you claim it, you can end this war. You can control the clans. You can be free." Elena shook her head, a flicker of fear in her eyes. "I don't want to control anyone." "Then destroy the heart," Cale countered. "But to do that, you must find it first." Cale led her on a perilous journey to the Temple of the First Night, a sacred place hidden for millennia, buried deep beneath ancient mountains. The journey was fraught with danger, but Cale's ancient knowledge and formidable power guided them through treacherous landscapes and forgotten pathways. They finally arrived at the temple, its entrance a massive, moss-covered archway carved into the mountainside. They entered together, stepping into a realm untouched by time. The temple was immense, its interior supported by colossal columns of obsidian. Ancient frescoes adorned the walls, depicting the life and ascension of Lilith, the mother of shadows. And in the very center of the vast chamber, bathed in an ethereal glow, stood a black stone altar. Upon it, pulsating with a soft, mesmerizing light, lay the primordial heart, a crystallized organ, shimmering with hues of red and gold. Elena approached it, her heart pounding with a mixture of awe and trepidation. As she drew near, the heart pulsed, its light intensifying, calling to her. Cale remained a respectful distance behind her. "Only you can touch it," he murmured, his voice low. Elena extended her hand, her fingers trembling as they reached for the glowing relic. The moment her skin brushed against its surface, a blinding vision engulfed her. She saw Lilith, radiant, powerful, immortal. Lilith spoke, her voice echoing not in Elena's ears, but directly in her mind, a symphony of ancient wisdom and profound love. "Daughter of my blood, you have arrived. The heart is yours. But know this, if you use it, you will never again be human. If you destroy it, the last vestiges of Lilith's bloodline will vanish forever. Choose with wisdom, The vision faded, leaving Elena breathless, the weight of the choice pressing down on her. She looked at the heart, then at Kyle, her eyes filled with a desperate question. If I destroy it, do I die too? Kyle averted his gaze, his voice barely a whisper. Probably. Elena took a deep, shuddering breath. And if I use it, you become the Queen of Shadows. Immortal. Powerful. But never again human. He looked at her, his crimson eyes filled with a complex mix of emotions. And you? What do you want? Kale stepped closer, his hand gently cupping her cheek. I want you to live in any way possible. He leaned his forehead against hers, his voice a soft, intimate murmur. But if you ask me what I truly desire... He paused, his gaze searching hers. I desire that you stay with me. Forever. Elena picked up the heart, its warmth spreading through her hand. She felt the immense power emanating from it, the promise of immortality, the burden of choice. She closed her eyes, weighing the options, the echoes of Lilith's voice and Kale's words swirling in her mind. And then, she made her decision. She pressed the heart against her own chest, directly over her beating heart. A blinding explosion of light erupted, engulfing her, filling the ancient temple with a golden radiance. Kyle recoiled, shielding his eyes from the intense glow. When the light finally subsided, Elena stood transformed. Her eyes, once a soft brown, now glowed with a brilliant, ethereal gold. Intricate patterns of light, like ancient runes, pulsed beneath the skin of her arms. Small, delicate fangs, sharp and pearlescent, now graced her mouth, and from her back, shimmering with an otherworldly luminescence, unfurled ethereal wings of pure light. She had become the primordial queen. As the last vestiges of the light faded, the temple of the first night was once again plunged into chaos. The 5 clans, having tracked Elena and Kale, burst into the sacred chamber, a horde of 50 vampires surging behind them. Seraphine's voice, sharp and triumphant, cut through the din. The heart. She has the heart. They surged forward, a wave of dark intent. But Elena, now radiating an aura of immense power, simply raised her hand. And every single vampire, from the most ancient elder to the youngest fledgling, froze. They were held captive, immobilized by the sheer, overwhelming power of the primordial heart, now fused with Elena's very being. Elena descended the steps of the altar, Kyle walking proudly beside her, his hand resting protectively on her back. She surveyed the frozen, terrified faces of the clans. "You hunted me," she declared, her voice resonating with a newfound authority, echoing through the vast temple. "You called me a key, a tool, but I am no one's tool." She approached Seraphine, her golden eyes burning with righteous fury. "And I am no one's pawn." With a mere gesture, Elena shattered Seraphine's blood magic, causing the lunar clan leader to scream in agony as her power was ripped away. She then turned her gaze to Magnus, the formidable Ironborn leader. "And I am not weak." With a silent command, she forced him to his knees, his massive form trembling under her unseen power. Finally, her gaze settled on Victor, her father. "And I am not your daughter." Victor, now stripped of his arrogance, wept openly, tears of blood streaming down his face. "Elena, please." She took a deep breath, her expression a complex mix of sorrow and unwavering resolve. "But I am also not a monster." With another gesture, she released them all from her hold. "So here is my ultimatum. The clans cease their warring, or I will destroy every single one of you." Her ethereal wings flared, casting shimmering light across the temple. "I am the primordial queen now. And this is the new era." Victor, humbled and broken, slowly approached her, his voice barely a whisper. "Elena, can you ever forgive me?" She looked at him, her golden eyes filled with a profound sadness, but devoid of hatred. "I don't know, but you have a lifetime to try." He nodded, his head bowed in shame, and then, with a final, lingering glance, he departed, leaving the temple in silence. When all the clans had finally left, Elena and Cale stood alone in the vast, echoing temple. Cale pulled her gently into his arms, his crimson eyes filled with an ancient adoration. "So, you're immortal now." Elena smiled, a radiant, powerful smile. "It seems so. And Queen, apparently..." Cale cupped her face in his hands, his gaze intense. "And is mine." Elena wrapped her arms around his neck, her body humming with newfound power and an ancient love. "Always was," she whispered, her voice filled with a promise that spanned millennia. And then, finally, they kissed. It was a kiss that transcended time, a kiss that sealed the fate of two worlds, a kiss that had been 3,000 years in the making. 3 months later, Elena stood on the balcony of her new home, the magnificent palace of the primordial queen. The clans, once her hunters, now bowed before her, their ancient rivalries quelled under her unwavering rule. A fragile, yet profound, peace had been achieved in the realm of eternal shadows. Cale entered, his silent presence a comforting warmth behind her. He embraced her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "How do you feel?" he murmured, his voice a low, contented rumble. Elena leaned back into his embrace, her gaze sweeping over the vast, peaceful landscape. Powerful, immortal, and strangely free. She turned in his arms, her golden eyes sparkling with a timeless joy. "Thank you for saving me." Kyle kissed her forehead, his lips lingering. "You saved yourself. I merely bought you time." They looked out at the horizon, the first rays of a new dawn painting the sky with hues of purple and gold. Elena whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "This is just the first night of eternity, isn't it?" Cale smiled, a rare, genuine smile that softened his ancient features. "Yes, and I wouldn't miss it for anything."